name is Gillian Small. I'm the University Provost and Senior Vice President for Academic Affairs, and I'm delighted to welcome everyone here today to Fairleigh Dickinson University's Convocation for the 2021-22 academic year. Today marks our first in-person convocation since 2019, and we're very pleased to be able to have this opportunity to gather and mark the new academic year. I especially want to thank the faculty for all of their efforts during the past 18 months, during which the pandemic has caused us to pivot a number of times in both how and where classes have been offered. You have remained professional, flexible, and caring to your students, who have benefited greatly from your efforts. We are very hopeful that we can remain in person and on campus with courses offered this academic year and going forward. However, should anything cause us to need to pivot again, I know that you're up to the task and will continue to provide our students with a first-class education. Before I introduce the members of the Platform Party who are not active participants in this afternoon's program, I'd like to first introduce our 8th President of Fairleigh Dickinson University, Dr. Christopher Capuano. As I announce members of the Platform Party, I kindly ask that the audience please hold your applause until I've introduced everyone. To my left, I think, Robert Pignatello, Senior Vice President for University Operations. Uchenna Baker, Vice President for Student Affairs and Dean of Students. Hanya Ferrara, Senior Vice President for Finance and Administration. Jason Amor, Senior Vice President for University Advancement. Luke Schulteis, Vice President for Enrollment, Planning and Effectiveness. Richard Frick, Vice President for Facilities and Auxiliary Services. Neil Sturm, Vice President and Chief Information Officer. Alan Cohen, President of the Faculty Senate. Anthony Adrignolo, Grand Marshal and Senior University Faculty Member. And representing the Board of Trustees, Robert Pures, Board of Trustee Member and Chair of the Finance, Audit and Budget Committee. Please recognize our Platform Party. If there are any retired faculty in attendance today, I ask that you please stand so that we may acknowledge you. I would also like to acknowledge in absentia the faculty, staff and students who are at our international campuses, Vancouver, British Columbia and Roxton in the UK, and therefore not in attendance today. And now it is my pleasure to present the academic deans and school directors who will introduce their new faculty for this academic year. Faculty should stand when their name is called and remain standing until all names in their respective college or school have been called. And I ask that you hold your applause until all names are read for a particular college or school. David Rosen, Interim Dean of the Maxwell Bechten College of Arts and Sciences, will introduce the new faculty in his college.
I am very pleased to introduce the new faculty in the Maxwell Bechten College of Arts and Sciences. Mabel Akinyemi, Lecturer of Biological Sciences. Oscar Havendano, Lecturer of English. Natalia Carrillo, Lecturer of Mathematics. Michael Cotto, Visiting Assistant Professor of English. Madeline Ferranz, Lecturer of Law. Melissa Ingala, Assistant Professor of Microbiology. James Jones, Lecturer in Criminal Justice. And Christopher Nunez, Assistant Professor of Theater. And Marina Saad, Assistant Professor of Criminal Justice. I welcome you all to the faculty of the Bechten College of Arts and Sciences.
Pierre Balthazar, Dean of Silberman College, will introduce the new faculty member in his college.
On behalf of Silberman College of Business, I would like to introduce our new faculty member, Wenyi Kang, who will be an assistant professor of supply chain management. Wenyi. And that is it. Welcome to Silberman College.
Alfredo Tan, the director of the School of Computer Sciences and Engineering, will introduce the new faculty member in his school.
Provost Moore, thank you. It's my great pleasure to introduce the newest faculty member in our school, School of Computer Science Engineering, Dr. Christopher Stubbs.
Vicky Cohen, director of the School of Education, will introduce the new faculty member in her school.
Welcome, everybody. I am very pleased that Dr. Jeremy Wright Kim, an assistant professor of higher education, will be joining our EDD in higher ed. Thank you. Welcome, Jeremy.
Minerva Gutman, director of the School of Nursing, will introduce the new faculty members in her school.
Thank you, Provost Small. It is my pleasure to introduce the new faculty of the School of Nursing and Allied Health, Dr. Una Dadi, Clinical Assistant Professor of Community Health Nursing, Professor Anna Klubet, Clinical Instructor of Medical Surgical Nursing, Dr. Philela Millman, Assistant Professor, Clinical Assistant Professor of Nursing, and Lawrence Sullivan, Clinical Instructor of Child Health Nursing. It is my pleasure to welcome you all to the faculty of the School of Nursing and Allied Health.
Michael Abeltroni, Dean of the School of Pharmacy and Health Sciences, will introduce the new faculty members in his school.
Good afternoon. We're delighted to welcome a number of new faculty members to the School of Pharmacy and Health Sciences, including Dr. Andrea Cole, Assistant Professor of Social Work, Dr. Christina Inteso, Clinical Assistant Professor of Pharmacy Practice, Dr. Elma Kaiser, Assistant Professor of Social Work, Dr. Un-Sun Kwan, Assistant Professor of Social Work, Dr. Amisha Mehta, Clinical Assistant Professor of Pharmacy Practice, Dr. Christine Muller, Assistant Professor of Occupational Therapy, and Dr. Susan Santalucia, Associate Professor of Occupational Therapy. On behalf of all of us, welcome to the School of Pharmacy and to Fairleigh Dickinson University.
Thank you, Michael. And already we have a technical glitch in that we omitted to mention a new faculty member in Bechten College, Christopher Nunez, Assistant Professor of Theatre. Is Christopher with us? Ben Freer, Director of the School of Psychology and Counseling, will introduce the new faculty in his school.
Thank you, Provost Small. It's my honor to welcome our two new faculty to the School of Psychology and Counseling, Benjamin Johnson, Assistant Professor of Clinical Psychology, and Rachel Pett-Santer, Assistant Professor of Clinical Psychology. Welcome to our school.
We have also hired two new faculty members at our Vancouver campus this year. Denise Jiang, Lecturer of International School of Hospitality, Sport and Tourism Management, and Afsne Javadi Baiji, lecturer in Computer Security and Forensic Administration in the School of Public and Global Affairs, and we acknowledge them in absentia. As you know, due to the pandemic, we were not able to hold in-person events in the last 18 months. This included the Board of Trustees picnic, which is normally held in June and was not held for both the 2020 and 2021 academic year. At that event, we traditionally invite the newly tenured faculty from that year to attend and be recognized by members of the administration and Board of Trustees. Thus, we are taking this opportunity to recognize those faculty from both years, and I will note that many have also been promoted, so I will use their current titles. I will first call out their name of the newly tenured faculty from 2020 and ask that those faculty stand when I call your name and remain standing until all the names have been read for that given year. And please hold applause until we've called out all the names for the 2020 year. Newly tenured faculty from 2020, Fahid Alizadeh, Marzi Azar Derakish, Anna Dushenkov, Robert Griffo, Stanley Hudley, Brian Noor, Omar Topalogu, and not in attendance, but from our Vancouver campus, Jarrett Bachman. These faculty represent Vahid, Associate Professor of Civil and Construction Engineering in the School of Computer Science and Engineering. Marzi is an Associate Professor of Civil and Construction Engineering in the School of Computer Science and Engineering. Anna is an Associate Professor of Pharmacy Practice. Robert is Associate Professor of Psychology in the School of Psychology and Counseling. Stanley is an Associate Professor of Mathematics in the School of Computer Science and Engineering. Brian is Associate Professor of Physics in Bechten College of Arts and Sciences. And Omar is an Associate Professor of Marketing in Silberman College of Business. And Jarrett is the Associate Professor of Hospitality and Tourism Management in the International School of Hospitality, Sports and Tourism Management in Vancouver. Please recognize these tenured faculty for their achievements. Thank you. Please be seated. We will now recognize the newly tenured faculty from 2021. Hyuna Cho, Associate Professor of Pharmaceutical Sciences in the School of Pharmacy and Health Sciences. Douglas Evans, Associate Professor of Criminal Justice in Bechten College of Arts and Sciences. Nicole Hansen, Associate Professor of Education in San Martino School of Education. Otito Iwuchukwu, Associate Professor of Pharmaceutical Sciences in the School of Pharmacy and Health Sciences. Kyle Kattleman, Associate Professor of Political Science in Bechten College of Arts and Sciences. Dongmi Kim, Associate Professor of Pharmacy Practice, School of Pharmacy and Health Sciences. Jordan Nowotny, Associate Professor of Criminology in Bechten College of Arts and Sciences. Linda Rafael Mendez, Associate Professor of Psychology in the School of Psychology and Counseling. Alivua Rao, Associate Professor of Computer Science, Computer Engineering and Science, School of Computer Sciences and Engineering. Carrie Shanafeld, Associate Professor of Literature, Bechten College of Arts and Sciences. Gurjot Singh, Associate Professor of Computer Sciences, Bechten College of Arts and Sciences. Margozata Shlugoki, Associate Professor of Pharmacy Practice, School of Pharmacy and Health Sciences. Please recognize these tenured faculty for their achievements. Congratulations to all of you. My introduction of today's keynote speaker, Dr. Jeffrey Weinman, is going to be a little longer than usual, so please indulge me for a few minutes. As many of you know, Jeff has had a long and distinguished career at Fairleigh Dickinson University for the past 53 years. He joined FDU in the Department of English on the Florham campus in 1968, after receiving his PhD from Johns Hopkins University. Over the years, he has held many roles on both campuses in New Jersey, and he also served on the Rutherford campus when that was part of FDU. Jeff's roles at FDU have included Director of Freshman Writing, Department Chair, Assistant Dean of Bechten College, Assistant Provost of the Metropolitan Campus, Associate Vice President for Academic Affairs, and from 1991 to 1997, he served as Vice President of Academic Affairs. From 2005 through the end of the 2020 academic year, Jeff served as Dean of Bechten College. Jeff has also played a key role in many important initiatives at the university, including the creation of the School of Pharmacy, now the School of Pharmacy and Health Sciences, and, of course, of the School of the Arts. He was integral in creating the university core, and throughout his career, he has published widely and presented papers at national and international conferences. On a personal note, I first met Jeff when I was recruited to the provost position at FDU in 2016. In fact, he was one of the first people I met because he chaired the search committee. He was generous with both his time and energy as I transitioned to the university. And over the past 5 years, I have turned to him for his sage advice on many occasions, not the least of which was during the period of restructuring the academic units. Never an easy thing to do at any university. Jeff was diligently involved and helped both design and lead the newly structured Bechten College. This was an enormous undertaking, and on top of all of that, we rolled out the new structure in the midst of the COVID pandemic. I am forever grateful, not only for the key role Jeff has played in making sure that the academic restructuring would be successful, but also for his personal friendship and support during my years at FDU. We will be celebrating Jeff at a reception following today's convocation, and I hope that you will all stay and join us for that tribute. The title of Jeff's address today is The Long and Winding Road, a Half Century at FDU. Jeff, please join me.
I appreciate your kind words. In preparation for this presentation, I started off with a formal paper, but my daughter said that I'd bore you to tears and that I should focus instead on some experiences that I've had over my past 53 years here at FDU. I told her that might bore you to tears as well, so I decided to take elements of both ideas in the hope that together they would not doubly bore you, but hopefully offer some personal and thoughtful comments along the way. So I'll start with my first visit to FDU in early 1968. Actually, I'll start just a bit before that, when I was finishing my doctorate at Johns Hopkins, as Jillian made reference to, and I was looking for a job. And as you know, one of the key places that you go to interview for jobs are at the annual professional conferences in your particular disciplines. Mine was in literature, so I went to the Modern Language Association conference, and as a result of a meeting that I had with a faculty member from Fairleigh Dickinson, I was invited to come to campus and for a final interview, and it was right here on the Florham campus, then called the Madison campus. To get to the interview, I had to borrow my uncle's car, and I drove out to Madison, a town I'd never heard of, quite honestly, through all the local towns. There was no completed Route 24 or Route 287. I was not in a covered wagon. I was in a car. And my only experience with New Jersey was driving up from Baltimore on the turnpike past all the oil refineries, and I swore I'd never work or live in New Jersey. But when I got to Madison, I couldn't believe it. Wow, what a wonderful, beautiful New England village it looked like. And then driving onto campus under the railroad bridge and up to the mansion, I just thought this is not the New Jersey I ever knew. The interview went well, and I began my career that summer teaching a survey course in American literature. I entered the classroom, sat at my desk, and then one of the young students walked up to me and said, "Oh, what are you, a wise guy? The teacher's going to be here any minute. You better get out of that desk." Now, that never happened to me again as my hair grayed and thinned, but it was my first experience at a classroom here. I was surprised and disturbed, quite honestly, by how uninterested the students were in the subject matter. I mean, why wouldn't they be thrilled to learn about Jonathan Edwards and the Puritans while sitting in an overheated classroom during the summer and coming from work at 5:30? Most of them worked full time. When I complained to my office colleague, she taught me my first valuable teaching lesson. Don't expect them to miraculously come up to your level. You need to bring them up. And in all my years of teaching, I've never forgotten those words. The issues we faced in the classroom then have, if anything, become even more prevalent today. How many students really read, write, or for that matter, even speak that much? What can we really assume about what they know and how they know it? At least as early as 1993, scholars were debating the future of the book. In an issue of Liberal Education, James Lichtenberg, at that time vice president and director of the Higher Education Association of American Publishers, in an essay he called "Reading, Does the Future Even Require It?" concluded that, quote, "As new technologies allow us to communicate in other forms of logic rather than simple verbal logic, the time may be near in which we come to separate the skill of reading from the process of acquiring and sharing information," unquote. He creates an analogy using the horse and the automobile. As the 20th century unfolded, he says, horses were replaced by cars to transport materials and people, but horses didn't disappear. Quote, "We still ride them and race them for personal pleasure. In the future, fiction, poetry, creative essays, and biographies may be our thoroughbreds," he concludes. Well, I don't know about you, but I haven't ridden any horses lately. His argument, I fear, is one that has been, in one form or another, used to minimize the value of a liberal arts education. But though he was not aware of Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikToking, he was certainly on target in recognizing that technology would change the way young people communicate and therefore learn. And while these changes have made communication simpler in many respects, they have also oversimplified the art of effective communication. But they're here to stay, clearly, or be replaced, more likely, by newer technologies, and we mustn't dismiss them, but rather find ways to make them effective teaching tools. Now, when I want to communicate with my granddaughter, Kelly, I need to send her a text with phrases like LMK, let me know, TBH, to be honest, BRB, be right back, and most of the time NVM, never mind, followed by a smiling emoji. We didn't use Facebook or Twitter then. When in my first year at FDU, I was asked to direct the freshman writing program because no one else in the department wanted to go near it. And this was my first taste of administrative work, and I loved the challenge. But that challenge was not nearly as big as the creation of University Core. The core program has undergone substantive changes since its inception 35 years ago, and I support these changes given the current realities of the university. But it's important, I think, to acknowledge and remember what the core moved to achieve when it was created, before the issues of race and gender so fully grabbed the attention not only of academics, but of many in our political, social, and economic spheres. Beginning in 1986, with grants of more than $600,000, the 100 faculty involved in building that program had the courage to move beyond the comfort of their discipline expertise and their traditional pedagogical techniques to interactive and collaborative learning exercises, and to demonstrate that often it is more important to ask the right questions than to have the right answers. The core recognized that much, if not all of what we taught came from the Western tradition, and that seldom were the voices of cultures throughout the world genuinely being heard. The faculty were also strongly committed to addressing issues of gender and race, along with multiculturalism. It took courage then, 35 years ago, to teach a core course, to move away from the comfortable world of one's discipline, to be willing to admit you don't have all the answers, to take on works you never imagined you'd be teaching when you were in graduate school, to be a teacher learner, encouraging your students to be the same, to engage your students in sometimes controversial discussions on difficult concepts and issues. To do that well is to be a truly great educator. When we chose the works to be included in core, the faculty also began to raise the types of questions that are only being raised again today in one form or another. For example, one of our sociologists asked, where were the women when Socrates was carrying on his dialogues? Well, we didn't have the answer to that question. But what we did do is introduce works like Women's Diaries of the Western Journey, a long-ignored piece of American social history. I remember well when Lenny Grob and Jack Becker, two of my colleagues at the time, and I visited with Lynn Cheney, who was then chair of the National Endowment for the Humanities, when we told her we were teaching the autobiography of Malcolm X, the interview ended. Over the past 20 years, some progress has been made in recognizing and addressing these issues beyond the core, though it has only been very recently that race and gender issues have moved to the center of discussion and action, both within and beyond the university. Last year, the Bechten College Committee on Inclusion and Diversity began discussing these same issues with the intention of having faculty examine how they were genuinely approaching them in their courses and in their respective disciplines. And I'm pleased that the university's task force on diversity and inclusion received major funding to move efforts like these forward. But the bottom line is, whether talking about the traditional liberal arts, business, hotel and restaurant management, nursing, pharmacy, engineering, these issues need to be addressed seriously. Although I've enjoyed each of my roles at FDU, I must say that my favorite has been not as VPAA, but as Dean of Bechten College, because among other initiatives, I was able to bring two very different projects to realization, which Jillian was kind enough to mention, the School of Pharmacy and the School of the Arts. The launching of the pharmacy school was a major event in FDU's history, and I felt so pleased and honored by the school at its first induction of students when I received my own white coat that had a label on the side that said Dr. Jeffrey Weinman. I was so pleased with that afternoon I kept it on. when I went to do some shopping at the Whole Foods Market in Madison. And all of a sudden, there was an announcement over the loudspeaker. Is there a doctor in the store? Someone has passed out in aisle 2. Well, I just kept shopping. And one woman looks at me and says, "What's the matter with you? You're a doctor. Why don't you help them?" Now, remember, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a pharmacist. I said, "I'm sorry. The only thing I can fix is a dangling participle." More recently, I was pleased to help put together the School of the Arts. I genuinely believed in the excellence of what we had to make that school a success. And I know most institutions like to say they have great faculty. Most institutions say that, of course. But I really believe that we do, and that we have strong leadership across the arts and faculty with wide experience beyond the classroom, and perhaps most importantly, a true dedication to our students. Thus far, almost $1 million in gifts enabled us to build a dance studio, a state-of-the-art animation lab, which is being dedicated tomorrow, offer student scholarships, and bring on board a director of the school. So I believe its future is really very bright. As many of you here today know, one of the greatest challenges we faced was working on putting into place the reorganization of Bechten College, incorporating key elements of what was University College and Petrocelli College. There was, and I am sure there continues to be, much concern about the feasibility of this change and what it portends. I can't answer that question, but I do want to say that the ways in which faculty across the campuses work together to create consistent curricula, a bigger job than those not involved in the process can imagine, made clear to me once again what a great faculty this university has. What would take most university years to accomplish, we accomplished for the most part within a year. Now, for sure, there's still more to be done, but I think a great deal was accomplished in a very short time. The commitment of this faculty to seek out what is best for their students, to preserve and build upon the integrity of their disciplines, to begin to move, as the University Corps did some years ago, beyond disciplines and work across units with colleagues in other colleges and departments is what makes FDU strong. Higher ed faces many challenges. We know that we're in competition with many other institutions of higher learning for shrinking populations of students and with more options in the public sector available than there were 50 years ago. A college education is a significant expense for students or for parents who are footing the bill, and calculating what the return on their investment will be in terms of careers with good earning potential. What does this mean to an institution that has always had as its foundation a strong commitment to the liberal arts? My answer is that institutions, just like individuals, must capitalize on their strengths. With so many higher ed institutions making severe cuts in liberal arts offerings, we need to remember that the liberal arts are one of our greatest strengths. As our students gain a growing awareness of complex social, economic, and political issues, we hope they'll be prepared to move our country and the world forward from confrontation to cooperation and understanding. To that end, the links between science, business, and the liberal arts are more essential than ever. And it appears that more and more major corporations are beginning to understand this. I looked over a range of job descriptions recently posted by several huge corporations for positions like finance director, senior marketing manager, benefits analyst, and clinical research scientist. Some of these at the entry level, others at a more advanced level, and certainly one must first possess all the appropriate degrees, and for more advanced positions, experience in the field. Higher on the list than has often been the case in the past were what industry likes to sometimes call the soft skills: ability to communicate effectively, write well, think outside the box. Degrees and experience in the field may get you in the door, but as a review of the educational backgrounds of some of our very top CEOs reveals, it's often those soft skills that ultimately make the big difference in terms of one's success. Of all the challenges you and I have faced, none have been greater than those created by this awful pandemic, which has impacted us both personally and professionally. Most of my retirement plans, including travel, are on hold, but others had fates much worse, including illness and death. And yet teaching went on. But it was and continues to be different. While many of us had begun to incorporate technology into our classrooms, even in a somewhat limited way through Blackboard, for example, and some of us had taught some courses remotely with varying degrees of success, it now became essential for all faculty suddenly to teach a full set of classes depending exclusively on technology. What a challenge for both teachers and students alike. Our science faculty had to offer virtual substitutes for in-person labs. Our theater faculty couldn't put students on the stage together. And all of our faculty faced teaching and learning challenges, getting to know students only by their faces on Zoom, if in fact they showed their faces while you were teaching. And then there was the issue of consistency. The whole semester would be online. The semester would be partly online and partly in person. Students could choose to be in the classroom or online, and instructors would have to teach both at the same time. Well, finally, as Jillian said, but we don't know if it really is finally, for now at least, most classes are in person. And students would need to be vaccinated, wear masks, and be distanced from one another, which creates other kinds of challenges for teaching, certainly. The challenges facing educators today are tremendous, and you are all to be applauded for the efforts you've made and continue to make to provide our students with the best education possible, to continue to build relations with them that go beyond their picture on a screen, and to use technology in conjunction with in-person learning to create an even more effective learning environment. In years to come, after graduation, former students, when asked what is it that they treasure most about their years at FDU, the answer will inevitably be the faculty who touched their lives and the staff at this institution who have done so as well. I never thought on my first drive to FDU that 53 years later, I'd be standing here talking about my career really, and my values as an educator. It's been a wonderful ride from that first ride up to the mansion, and a fully satisfying one. So to all of you who have made this possible and continue to do great things for the university, my thanks.
Thank you, Jeff. I am now pleased to present the recipients of the 2021 Distinguished Faculty Awards, who are being honored for their outstanding contributions to the university. The recipient of this year's Distinguished Faculty Award for Service is Professor Bruce Peabody. Bruce, would you join me? In the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic, Bruce Peabody threw out a virtual lifeline to homebound seniors in the Florham Institute for Lifelong Learning, or PHIL, program by successfully advocating for online classes. It was a monumental gift to the community, said one grateful student. It kept many of us both safe and sane. Bruce, who's Professor of Government and Politics in Bechten College, has served as Director of PHIL since 2011, working tirelessly to administer a program that brings together both young and old in an active learning environment. Each semester, approximately 150 seniors, aged 62 and older, take a variety of classes, many alongside undergraduate students. It's an enriching experience for everyone involved. Undergraduates benefit from hearing first-hand accounts of history from those who lived through it. The senior citizens benefit from continued interaction and learning. Professor Peabody engenders inclusiveness for my demographic of older students by building in a true sense of belonging to the FDU community, said one student. Bruce also has long embraced the value of a culture of faculty service. He has labored long and often unsung hours towards that goal. His fellow faculty members have entrusted him to represent their voices with fairness and vision on task forces, presidential searches, and key committees. His impact has been immeasurable and invaluable. Since arriving at FDU in 2000, Bruce has won multiple accolades from both students and faculty. He is a 3-time recipient of the Student Government Association's Outstanding Faculty Member Award and recipient of the Distinguished Faculty Award for Research and Scholarship in 2012 and the Bechten College Teacher of the Year Award in 2004. Today, in recognition of his devotion to students, his tireless efforts to administer a program with an incalculable impact on FDU and in service of the surrounding community, and his ceaseless efforts to advance our university internally and externally, we present Bruce Peabody with a Distinguished Faculty Award for service.
Thank you, Provost Small and President Capuano and all of my colleagues and friends. So service is different. In teaching or research, a personal passion, a relentless idea, even thinking of oneself as the center of the intellectual universe can be a plus. It need not be a liability. Indeed, it's often a prerequisite to success, I think. But service, at least as I've come to understand it, is more like parenting. It involves the regular distancing and even extinguishing of one's ego. It's negotiated conflict resolution and strategic napping for all parties involved. If you aren't focused on others, you aren't doing it right. Service is different in a second way. Even in the age of Zoom and cross-disciplinary collaboration, many of our most important insights and contributions as teachers and researchers remain solitary. The classroom and the conference hall, the lectern, and the peer review process shine a sometimes hard light on a stage where we strut and fret and sometimes stumble, and usually, or at least often, alone. But service, at least when it endures, is collective. You need someone to move the business, to take on tasks, someone to get that damn window open in an insufferably hot room. Most wonderfully and surprising, I think, service is different because the Academy gets it right. The work that is the steady backbeat of so much university life, so much of what we do happens because people volunteer their time, their enthusiasm, their professionalism, their talents, often in a quite unregulated and maybe even chaotic fashion. Service is a flash mob with little rehearsal and even less wardrobe coordination. And like a flash mob, seeing your colleagues' performance and the fruit of their labor can be entertaining, satirical, often unintentionally, artistic, but most important of all, moving. I'm a bit embarrassed by my keen awareness, maybe painful awareness, that there's many people in this under this awning that are more deserving of this award than I am. But just to be clear, even though Jillian is holding it for me, I won't loosen my claw-like grip on the award, and I won't lose any sleepless nights over who else might have gotten it. And that's because I think there's another point. Service is not just a speech that stills a room, leadership through crises, or sitting on committees that untrack the course of an institution. Service is also quiet work, listening to colleagues, nudging, interstitial growth, blowing gently on the spark of someone else's good idea while trying not to start a brush fire. So dear colleagues, thank you very much for this award, and thank you for your friendship, your generosity, and service in all its abundant, odd, and rewarding forms. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bruce. The recipient of this year's Distinguished Faculty Award for Teaching is Professor Gary Darden. Gary, please join. Gary is chair of the Department of Social Sciences and History and associate professor of history. He's known as one of the toughest, most demanding professors at the Florham campus. Yet every semester, a near cult-like following of students flock to his history classes. His passionate approach to history and to teaching led one student to describe him as one of the most caring and educated professors at FDU. Over the years, Gary has led adventurous students on 11 study abroad trips to 13 different countries on 3 separate continents. His carefully curated global tours include visits to historic sites that relate directly to the courses that he's teaching. He intertwines teaching with sightseeing to give his students once-in-a-lifetime learning experiences. FDU's own Roxton College is one of his favorite destinations, with its close proximity to important battlefields in Europe. Brian Swansey, Director of Study Abroad for Outreach, credits Gary with demystifying study abroad for faculty colleagues, noting, his success has given confidence to those looking to take their own students' groups abroad. Named chair of the Department of Social Sciences and History in 2013, Gary has won the respect of his department colleagues for preserving its high teaching standards and for mentoring young faculty members. More importantly, says Gloria Pastorino, professor of Italian and French language and literature, Gary spends endless hours with students for whom his door is always open. Since joining FDU in 2006, Gary has garnered numerous awards for teaching, including Teacher of the Year honors from his Maxwell Bechten College of Arts and Sciences colleagues. For bringing the lessons of history to life and for helping our students apply the lens of the past to better understand the future, we present Gary Darden with the Distinguished Faculty Award for Teaching.
I'd like to say thank you to Provost Small. I've enjoyed working with her since she arrived back in the fall of 2016. And I also want to thank President Capuano, who I've been able to work with through the Faculty Senate. I also want to thank the board and the senior administration. In terms of teaching, when students come in and say they don't know what they want to be when they grow up, or they don't know what their major is going to be, if you tell me you don't want to major in history, that's totally fine. I'll take you to accounting. I'll take you to biology. But I say, what is your dream job? And I said, the answer to that question is how you're going to get to that point. And we'll see where FDU can line you up in that direction. I had my dream job. So I went to Hampton-Sydney College in Virginia. It was founded by Patrick Henry and James Madison. And I went there as a political science major and wanting to go to law school and to be a courtroom lawyer and a judge. And lo and behold, I realized I actually liked the history professors, and I realized I wanted their job. So I switched to history, and then I decided to major in history, obviously, graduated with honors, and then went on to get my master's and my PhD at Rutgers. And here I arrived right after I defended my dissertation. So I defended my dissertation on a Thursday, and I showed up here to start work on a Monday in 2005. Jeff Weinman was the dean when I arrived, and he has been a mentor and a friend ever since. I would not be up here if it wasn't for Jeff Weinman. Also, David Rosen, the interim dean of my college, was the chair of my department when I arrived. He was also the chair that wrote my tenure and promotion letter. I also would not be up here if it wasn't for David Rosen. But I really want to give a shout out to the Department of Social Sciences and History. It's easy to be up here if you're surrounded by excellent colleagues. And to give you an idea, in my department with 18 faculty currently, the department has won 11 of these awards. 5 for scholarship, 3 for service, 3 for teaching, 4 faculty, including Bruce, Pete Burkholder, and David Rosen, have won 2 of these awards. I was grateful to have won the service award back in 2017. If I also include Peter Woolley, where's Peter? Peter is a proud political scientist who spent years in our department. He also won 2 of these awards. So being surrounded by these types of colleagues is a really great honor for me in that area here. I also want to give a shout out to Michael Adams and to Chris Capuano, because the global mission, whether it's Vancouver, Roxton, our ability to engage the world outside of our campus, let alone outside the United States, would not be possible if they weren't committed to that legacy. Of my 11 study abroads, 5 have been to Roxton. So I am a passionate defender of Roxton. This is the report prepared by the faculty in the fall of 2020, which I'm happy to share with anyone about where we can go from here. But I spent a full sabbatical at Roxton as a faculty scholar in residence. I attended classes, I went to theater, I went to museums, and I've taught over there 5 times and been over 2 additional times. I can tell you as a semester resident, I can tell you as a teacher there, it has a profound impact on our students. In a crowded field of universities that offer the same mishmash here inside New Jersey or in the Mid-Atlantic, Roxton makes us stand out above and beyond all of our peers. And Michael Adams proudly called it the jewel in the crown. And I appreciate President Capuano's reaffirmation to the role and value of Roxton in the mission of FDU. And so on that note, I would like to dedicate this award to Roxton, to all of our proud alumni, our students, and the faculty and staff that make that wonderful institution beat to make FDU a stronger university. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. The recipient of this year's Distinguished Faculty Award for Research and Scholarship is Professor James Gifford. James is a faculty member at our Vancouver campus, and due to the pandemic-related travel restrictions, is not able to be with us today. He has asked his chair, Dr. Matthew Boyd, to accept his award and make remarks on his behalf. So let me ask Matthew to come and join me. James Gifford is Professor of English and Director of the Editorial Committee for the FDU Press. He's also Director of University Corps. He's an exemplary scholar and prodigious researcher. His work and his insights have firmly established him as a leading voice in 20th century literary studies and beyond. A faculty member at the University of South Carolina says this of his impact: working with a deep knowledge of political theory, music, philosophy, and the digital humanities, Dr. Gifford may teach and publish under the rubric of English but his publications model the deepest sort of humanist interdisciplinarity. James is one of the world's foremost authorities on the celebrated British author Lawrence Durrell, whose Alexandria Quartet novels are ranked amongst the greatest works of the 20th century English literature. James's writing routinely appears in elite journals around the world. He's known for being able to connect seemingly minor motifs into a wider collective, turning literary moments into movements. Ever inquisitive, James continues to tap new veins of scholarship. His 2018 book, A Modernist Fantasy, Modernism, Anarchism, and the Radical Fantastic, won the Neopoic Society's greatest award for scholarship. It's a remarkable distinction for someone new to that field of study. In recognition of his international reputation as a scholar and researcher, and given his considerable editorial skills, James was appointed in 2017 as only the third director of the Fairleigh Dickinson University Press. FDU's academic community benefits from his dedication to that challenging role, as he advances new knowledge, identifies promising scholars and researchers, and helps preserve academic freedom. And so today, we celebrate his many contributions to enrich the university's academic culture and global stature, and honor him with the Distinguished Faculty Award for Research and Scholarship.
The department is obviously thrilled to receive this award in the person of James. Here I am speaking the words of James to you from Vancouver. First, thank you. My friends and colleagues, I am sorry not to see you in person. I wish that circumstances allowed us to share this day together. We sometimes joke that the life of a scholar is lonely because of the time we spend in the library or laboratory. We believe that joke at times too. But the image of the lone scholar really isn't true. None of the research we do is possible without a community. We all build from each other's work. We rely on each other's guidance. And every stage of scholarly life relies on the mutual aid we freely give each other, whether it's anonymously behind peer review or within the community of scholars we call our university. So this award is, in reality, an acknowledgement of that community, not just the individuals it supports. I see this award as an acknowledgement of how our community supports making and sharing knowledge through teaching, learning, and research. All three of these together are part of the same community of care. I also believe that by granting me this award, the committee is acknowledging the academic community on the Vancouver campus and in my home department of Literature, Languages, Writing, and Humanities. Without both, my own work would not be possible. So I wish to express my gratitude to the committee, to all of you, my friends, students, and colleagues, and to the communities that foster our work, the work that all of us do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Matthew. This concludes this year's Convocation. Thank you all for attending, and I wish you all a wonderful, safe, and healthy academic year.